Episodic and semantic memories. So this is the last subdivision we're going to make along the way here. I'll even show you a flowchart along the way here to help you remember how these subcategories split from each other. But this, if it seemed like I was vague when I was talking about declarative memory before, it's because you have to split declarative memory into these two more forms, episodic and semantic. So this is the kind of breakdown chart that we have for this. Your non-declarative, or your procedural, as we formally say, memory has three components to it. The skills that you've learned are procedural memories, priming to the environment, and conditioning. So again, it's all the things that your nervous system kind of knows how to do on autopilot that you don't have to consciously think about for them to work. Whereas declarative memory has this double split to it, the episodic versus the semantic memory. And if I were to give the simple definitions of what these two things are, and again, one of them is a little bit dependent on the other. I'll explain that as we go along here. An episodic memory is a memory, again, because it's declarative, it's a conscious memory that you could put into words, recall vividly, describe to somebody else, etc. Your declarative memories, when they're episodic, are events that occurred somewhere in your life history, in the narrative of your life history. So not necessarily even things that happened to you. That's yet another subset. It's the biggest subset, but it's another subset of episodic memories that we call our autobiographical memories. But our episodic memories also remember events that we've seen with our own eyes, or things that we went to where someone else did something important, etc. But anything that was an episode in the TV show that is your life is a way that some people remember this. Anything that was an event in your life history that you can place before some events and after other events in your own personal recollections, that's an episodic memory. A semantic memory, again, we actually have an everyday layperson term for this that is a little bit different. Your semantic memory is literally just your general knowledge. It's things that you know, but you can't really place where you learned them in your life history. You just know that you know them. It's just general knowledge. So the defining characteristic of what we call an episodic memory in the cognitive science language on this is referred to as the episodic trace. So something that is an episodic memory, when you recall it, when it comes up in real time as a memory, you have this intrinsic sense of whenness. You get the feeling that it happened somewhere in your past, and you could vaguely place where and when it happened. That episodic trace is what defines the entire subset of declarative memories we call the episodic memories. So something like what you ate for breakfast yesterday. If you can remember that, you remember it as an episodic memory, something in your life history. If you recall the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to you, that is an episodic memory. Recalling your first kiss may be the same thing as that previous one for some of you. Maybe the most humiliating thing that ever happened to you. But again, that's an episodic memory. And every one of these things, not only do you know it happened, and you know it happened to or around you, but you have a vague sense of when and where it happened to you. It's part of the narrative of your life history. That intuitive sense of whenness and whereness should not be confused with just knowing that something, like as part of the details themselves, knowing that something did or did not happen at certain different times. Anyone who's very familiar with, let's say, American colonial history, for example, will know the United States Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. It's a famous number that gets thrown around in that sense. But the fact that you know where it happened in Delaware, I think, or something like this, and you know when it happened, doesn't make it an episodic memory. Knowing when and knowing when is difficult. Is different from having the episodic trace, from having that intuitive sense that it fits into the where and when of your own life history. Unless any of you are, time travelers or secret immortals or something like this, none of you were at the signing of the American Declaration of Independence. It couldn't have actually happened in your life narrative, but it is possible for you, as part of your general knowledge, to just know anecdotally that it happened at a particular time and place. That's the distinction I'm making here. This actually comes up a lot when people talk about their childhood memories. We all have some childhood memories that have the episodic trace still. You get that first-person sensation of like, yes, this really happened to me. I can place it in my life history. I can feel where it fits in the order of events that have happened in my life. But a lot of us only know about a bunch of our childhood memories, especially the earlier ones, because we recall that they are stories told to us by our parents. I've heard all kinds of stories about when I was a little page boy at a family friend's wedding or something like this when I was only 3 years old. I have no episodic trace for that. I don't remember it ever happening to me in real time, but I know that it has happened as a semantic memory because it's been told to me by my parents, a million times, and part of the details of that are when and where it happened. That's not the same thing as having the episodic trace of that intuitive sense of whenness and whereness. So, like I said, when you also have the self-trace on top of that, when you know that something didn't just happen in your life history, but it overtly and distinctly happened to you in a first-person perspective, that's when we get the subset of episodic memories called autobiographical memories. I only introduced that here because the textbook in particular will sometimes make specific distinctions about autobiographical memories. I didn't want anybody to think that all episodic memories are autobiographical, but a lot of them are. So, well, yeah, again, like when we were talking about this, like again, that's episodic. The other one is semantic. The two of them are connected to each other. There's a reason they fall together under the declarative category here. I'm just trying to think, what's the best way to say this? I don't want to say that semantic memories are kind of, your general knowledge are broken episodic memories, but the simple way of putting it is that every single declarative memory you have ever encoded and then were capable of retrieving at some point later in your life started as an episodic memory, and then a lot of them will have lost their episodic trace. You'll have lost that sense of whenness in your own life history, and they become general knowledge then. They become semantic memories when they're just something you remember as being true, but it's kind of out of context. When you learned it has come apart in that sense. A lot of the other traces that we have will still be able to organize our semantic memories. Again, we can remember true facts versus lies that someone has knowingly told us, or fiction, or something like this. We can even make speculation as to how certain or uncertain we are. If you ask somebody who is not a Scientologist, what do Scientologists believe? They will be able to tell you true facts that they don't necessarily think are real, or more than likely don't think are real, but can kind of categorize them that way. They are fictions to me, but real to somebody else, but you probably don't remember where they come from. That's kind of the internal organization of this. All that's missing to define something as a semantic memory is the episodic trace. So these are some examples of semantic memories that probably everyone watching this video has. Is the world flat or spherical? It's spherical, but again, that's just general knowledge that you have about the world. Who is the current president of the United States of America? Bit of an uncomfortable question to ask now, but let's go from there. Which coast of the United States is San Francisco on? Anyone who's familiar with geography will know it's on the west coast. Where did ancient Greek pantheists think that lightning came from? Again, you don't necessarily think the answer to that question is true, but you can nest it as knowing it's a true fact about someone else's beliefs. This is my favorite one. What is the name on Batman's birth certificate? Well, it's Bruce Wayne, a lot of you will know, but you will also know that this is a true fact about a fictitious person in a fictitious universe sustained in comic books and movies and things like this. That we can sub-organize our semantic memories this way, but the most important thing is for every single one of those details, you probably couldn't tell me where and when in your own life history you learned it. I mean, you might say, I probably learned in school that the world is spherical, that it's round, but do you remember sitting in class and which of your teachers told you that? That is the essence of it. That's the difference between a semantic memory and an episodic memory. It's a thing that I always wonder as a teacher. In real time, every piece of information that you're learning from these online lectures is being encoded, whatever it is you remember that is, it's being encoded as a set of episodic memories. You remember sitting at your computer or on your tablet or something like this and watching these lectures. You remember that this is information that I have given you. But one day, you will only remember the facts themselves. You'll only remember these distinctions of memory and things like this. How long will you remember that I'm the one who taught you this and that this is where it comes from? Again, that eventually, most of our episodic memories degrade. If they are still relevant, we maintain the raw facts of them, and they turn into semantic memories. So again, this is just a taxonomy of this for when you're revising this. This is another bigger version of the flowchart, which again, you take the two faculties of short-term memory, sensory and working memory, out of there. Then you have long-term memory. You split it all down here. It's an easy way of breaking it up. But this brings us to our last section, errors and failures of memory. I'll see you there.